MMA fans? This is Sophisticated MMA. I'm Kate, and we're not in my kitchen again. Just got finished doing my first 25-minute bag workout that I've done in a long time. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you may know that I tore my calf a couple months ago and then tore it again. So it's been a whole ordeal trying to work out, so I've mostly been sticking with weights. But today I decided I'm gonna give the bag a shot. So if you follow me on Instagram, I did post a little clip of that. So usually I'm sticking with the sophisticated part, but today we're gonna go with MMA. UFC 251. That was a night. I had so much fun watching so many of those fights, and if you want to see an awful lot of my opinions, I highly recommend going to the Fight Night Picks YouTube channel. I will link the video. I don't know where it shows up on YouTube, but I will link the video for my recency bias with John Franklin on Fight Night Picks. So we did break down an awful lot. But what I wanted to talk about today is one of the topics I brought up in that video very quickly. We have got to figure out scoring for MMA. Right now, I know, full disclosure, I know nothing about boxing. All I know is that we are still using the 10-9 boxing scoring for MMA, and I'm starting to see a lot of problems with that, and there have been a lot of opinions thrown out as to what we should do moving forward. And so I want to present the three options that I think we could do, and I think we need to do one of these things. I don't think that we can continue. I did score the fight for Max. I know, looking at the numbers after the fact, a couple people are coming around to Volkanovski, but the fact that we can have a close fight and still have such a argument over who won it, we've got to figure out a way to better differentiate between boxing scoring and MMA because they are such different sports. Here's my theory as far as how that fight got scored the way that it did, because the things that I've been reading online have been saying that Max had the first 3 rounds and Volkanovski had the last 2. And there are a couple people that bring up the whole, well, you have to win at the end of the fight, and we'll get into that. But that if Max had the first 3 rounds, why isn't he winning the fight? And here was my thought on that, and here's kind of where we get into the problem of the way that we score these fights. I think that because the 3rd round was so close, razor thin, I really could have gone either way, but in the end I gave the edge to Max. But because the 3rd round was so close, I am suspecting that the judges that scored it for Volkanovski did so because they didn't want to decide the fight. They had given the first 2 rounds to Max, and all of a sudden they're sitting there going, shoot, if we give this round to Max, unless Volkanovski finishes him, we've decided the fight. And I don't know if I can decide the fight at this point because it was so close. Even the first 2 rounds were still close. Even though those went to Max, I still thought the whole fight was a close fight. And so I had the sneaking suspicion that those judges were sitting there going, I can't give this fight to Max at this point. It's too close. The last 2 rounds, anything could happen. And I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that assumption, but I don't know. I mean, these judges are human. So what are the things that we could do to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again? The first idea that has been thrown out a lot is open scoring, or opening up the rounds and announcing the round score at the end of the round, and so the whole crowd can weigh in. Now, we don't have a crowd right now, so I don't know if that one's going to be quite as effective, but knowing what the score is, in this case, in the case of Max and Volkanovski, because that's the one I'm going to focus on mostly, if Volkanovski sees that he's down 3 rounds, he knows he has to finish the fight. He doesn't get to give himself that 3rd round and hope for the best. He knows he has to finish the fight, which could very easily change his game plan and change how he goes in there. So I think it changes how a fighter is entering each round if they know what the score is. So there's some definite merits to that. The other thing that we could do is start assigning points differently. Instead of a 10-9 per round system, score the fight on the whole. I think this was suggested by Ben Askren in his podcast, or maybe it was just on Instagram. But he suggested that we score the fight on the whole. At the end of the fight, you get to look back and say, who won that fight? And I don't know if that's what he's saying exactly how you should do it, but that's what I'm saying. You keep your little tally marks, and you kind of look at things round by round and takedown by takedown and strike by strike. But at the end of the fight, you get to sit there and go, okay, who did enough? Who did enough to win that whole fight? So that's the other option, is to score the fight on the whole. The third option, and this was the option that I came up with one of the coaches here, weighted rounds. Now, I know a lot of you are not gonna like this one, but hear me out. And if somebody could help me figure out the math on this one, I can't math to save my life. So if you can help me figure out the math on this, that would be awesome. But here was the way that we had figured it out, is that we still stick with the either 10-9 or 1-0 or some sort of binary scoring system where you either run the round or you didn't. And then the 3rd round or the 4th and 5th round are weighted more heavily, so they're worth more. And the reason that I came up with this is I was getting a little tired of seeing fights going to the fighter who just managed to survive the last round or the last 2 rounds. When MMA started, the best I can figure, they were trying to mimic as closely as possible a real world situation. In an actual fight, which martial art discipline would succeed? And the answer has been all of them. It depends. It totally depends on the situation. So if that's how we're trying to frame it, if we're trying to frame it in the way that says we're trying to see who won this fight, who in the streets, if this had happened, who would have been considered the winner? And in my mind, you gotta go with the guy who finished it. If he didn't knock someone out or submit them, was he still fighting the hardest, the best at the end of the fight? Because that's how it would go in the real world. In the real world, there is no bell, there is no referee. It's he who's on top at the end wins. So I know that this is controversial because it's very, very unlike what we have right now. And if we did it with a 10-8 or a 10-9 scoring system, so round 1 would be, one fighter gets 10-9, round 2, the other fighter gets 10-9, round 3, it's 2 10-9s that are then added together. If one fighter loses both rounds and wins in the third, that would be a draw. So it would be a lot more draws in the sport, which I don't know if that would go over so well. So there's a better mathematical way to do this, and I don't know what it is. So if there's anybody out there smarter than me, which I'm sure is a lot of you, please help me in figuring this out. I would love to hear in the comments how we could make this work. But given that system, Rose would have lost, in my opinion. Jessica, in that last round, looked great. She was after it. And Rose, I think, knew she was up 2 rounds, so she was being more technical. She was being more careful. I don't know if that's the way I want to see fights go. Maybe it's the way that they should go. Maybe a fighter should get to coast in the last round or in the last 2 rounds. But I don't know that I agree. I don't know. The point of this whole video is something has to change. Something. Anything. Get DC, Dominic Cruz, who's a couple other people, I'm blanking on names, but get some of the people that have had experience, that know enough about the analysis of MMA, that they could figure out what's the best way to do it. Because right now, we still don't know really in our minds how to score a takedown versus a knockdown. There are some people that think a takedown and a knockdown should be considered the same thing, and I totally disagree. Takedowns are far more plentiful in fights than knockdowns are. So we still can't come to an agreement on what equals what, or what is worth more. And so if we are still dealing with so much subjectivity, how can we possibly boil it down to this fighter scored 10 points and this fighter scored 9 points? I know that they're trying to get more people to do 10-8, but then it still seems like we're wasting an awful lot of points. I still don't see the point of a 10-point system if you can't say 10-2. But in boxing, that might work because you've got 11 more rounds to make it up. In MMA, you've only got 2. So, yeah. So this scoring system is not working. I realize that the judges are still at times doing a bad job of applying the system that we do have, but I'm getting kind of tired of blaming the judges because they're people. They're people who are trying their best with the system that they have, and it's not a good system. It's just not, and we have to figure it out. Okay. So that was my one-take Chael Sonnen style video without a script. So sorry if I rambled in different directions, but I'm trying something new today after my workout. If you can, like, share, subscribe, be sure to follow me on Instagram because you'll see different content there than I ever post here. I certainly don't put out most of my stuff on YouTube. So I would love to hear what you guys think. What are your ideas for how we should change the scoring systems? Because if there's one thing I'm not budging on, it's that something needs to change. So comment below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.